It looks like a legal goal.
All right, I am joined by Chris Haynes, Captain Canada, as he's been known internationally. You're a man of many hats, Chris. So you
I
got
am.
what Captain Canada. Now you're starting a podcast back up. Is what you were telling me just before we started.
Yeah. So my name's Chris. Yeah, I am captain of the Canadian 40K national team, world's team. You know, it's hard to get that verbiage right. We have to work on that. I also am the host of Canhammer Podcast, and I also run the Canhammer YouTube page, but I haven't done anything in that in years. It was primarily run by Darren. And yes, I run Canhammer Team Tournament and Capital City Bloodbath now. So since Darren left the organization, it's kind of come back on me. So we're restructuring. Yeah.
All right. So can we expect more Custodes content, or do you think you're going to explore some different, some different factions now? You have more leeway.
Well, I don't know. I think I did play a lot of Custodes. You know, I did.
That's
Custodes
why I ask. I know
this
it's
summer.
also your favorite. Like I know a lot of people they kind of gave Darren shit for like doing only Custodes, but you're a little fanboy too. I know it.
I would say, yeah, I'm excited. There's a new codex coming out in the winter time or late winter, so I'm really excited for that. So I could see if that book is like good enough. Right now, Custodes are in a rough place. I think they're better than maybe the stats gives them credit for. You know, there's a lot of things where people, these like lower tier books like the Custodes, it's just not worth the effort for a lot of really competitive players to put it in. So they end up just like having a really low win rate. I still think you can win with Custodes, like do well, but you're not going to be topping the podium. Or if you are, it's matchup dependent. You have to play really hard. So, yeah.
Well, one thing that Manny Chima told me recently about actually talking about Dead Guard, he said, I like what they do because they do a lot of things, but I would not bother because it's such a challenge in the top three. Like it will do fine against everything, but in the top three you really have to struggle. So why would I bother if I can just play what's in the top three that's like just significantly better? It's not like an uphill battle.
Yeah, and I think that goes two ways. Like when a book is like top three or abnormal, the win rate is higher than maybe it is in reality. Like I know there's a lot of people that'll play, you know, Eldar and they go like 3-3 or lower, and they're like, man, Eldar is supposed to be broken. It's like, no, they're just better at the top,
Yeah.
right? And so they get a lot more credit. A lot of the good players are on them because they're one of the better books. Chaos Space Marines are similar right now, as well as Votan. Yeah, so I kind of agree with Manny. It's like if you're serious in this hobby and you have lots of armies and you're that kind of into competitive play, why would you ever take a lower tier book unless you just want to, you know, a refresh tournament or you want to whatever? And I think that drives the numbers down artificially, right?
Oh, 100%. And especially, well, it's funny because yesterday I was talking with Jeremy for another episode of this, and he said the same thing. Is like there's like four places that do like stats, and they're all like similar, but they're very different in how they tackle it. So I think the stats are a little bit what the person wants to reflect when they like nobody's truly like super objective with this. There's always like a little bit of an intent towards like what they like or what they don't like. So I think maybe like giving the stats too much credit is one thing. But
I think so. Yeah, I 100% agree with you there. The stat and it's you know, it's also what that group is maybe values, right? So a lot of like, I'm just going to pick on Jeremy. He's not going to like it, but like Jeremy values GTs over a certain size and singles play, right? So all of his stats reflect GTs of a
over
certain
a certain side.
size. Yeah, and for singles, right? Whereas some stats like might reflect all tournament games, or some might be just like, you know, like other ones, right? So
Oh,
I
agree.
can't think of examples. I do follow like it sounds stupid, but I follow Risk competitively. I used to play Risk as a kid, and then recently I started following that again a
Do
little
you
bit. It's
still
like an
play, or you
online
just like
version.
watch the?
I play online sometimes because it's like really slow pace, so I can paint and then do my
Oh,
turn. But it's funny because in the Risk community, there's the same argument that we have about stats and elo, is they have like an elo system that gets you to Grandmaster and ranked. And everybody's like, well, it's not reflected. It's like the people that play more games, they get higher up and blah, blah, blah. And then there's like this different ranking system that's only tournament games, which aren't ranked. And it's like,
yeah.
it goes by how you place in tournaments. And so they argue. And so I was kind of doing that parallel between Risk and 40K. And I was like, it's not just us, it's them too, right? Like nobody can agree on metrics that best represent them. And I guess if the metrics that you choose represent you in a favorable light, you're more likely to push those metrics, right?
Probably, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Or you tend to prioritize that in your hobby, maybe. You have no idea what a rabbit hole you just opened. Like, as soon as we're done with this, I'm gonna go look at fucking like competitive risk.
Oh yeah, I can give you some really
I'm a
good
huge
channels.
nerd
Yeah.
about this. This is terrible. What you did to me. There were no words.
So I own like 20 risk boards. Like I have all the Lord of the Rings ones. I have the
The
Warhammer
first two
ones.
ones were not good enough. You needed a third board to really like get your skills out there.
I've never played most of them, to be honest, because like I don't have time to play Risk. I play 40K, but it's like it's always a thing. Like if I'm in Walmart and I see a really cool Risk board, I'm like, that's mine. It's going in my shelf.
Yeah, like a collection of like all these crazy expansions and stuff. I get it. But one thing that you touched, well, because you are a very like serious gamer, as we said, you're the captain of like Team Canada, and you do mostly turn. Do you play like for fun games, or even like your basement game, like you have a cool setup behind you, just practice?
Yeah. So I would like to. I do have a guy locally that we play for fun sometimes, very rarely these days. We both have kids and stuff, and so it's really challenging. But like when I play, I only play competitive. I'm only practicing for tournaments. So the table behind me, like the guys that most likely play on that table is Francois, Jason Sparks. Like when they come over, we're testing lists. Nick Blackburn has came down. It's been a while since he's come down, but like we play test games. So like we might be playing for fun, as in like I'm trying a messed up list, but no, I've been very clear with people, especially like locally. Like I'm not interested in showing up and just like throwing dice and doing a narrative thing. And it's not that I don't enjoy that. It's that I don't have time. So I have to prioritize in like people that say they don't have time for things are wrong. I think they're just not prioritizing the right
Yes,
things.
you don't have time for all the things at the same level. You make probably sacrifices for 40K. I do the same thing. Like a lot of people, like, why don't you play Age of Sigmar? Well, you would love Age of Sigmar. I probably would, but if I have like a 3 hour span, I probably want to play 40K. If I can find a game of 40K, I'll play 40K.
Yeah, like Dom said that to me, right? He was like, "Oh, are you going to play Warhammer? Was it the Old World?" And I was like, I would love to, but as long as I'm captain of Team Canada, like I just need to focus on 40K. I need to focus on that. I think once I'm finished with the maybe like you can't be a WTC player and play like and have fun and play all unless you're a professional. If that's your day job, yeah, you could go and play just Sigmar 2 days and do this, but I can't do that for sure.
And does that translate into your hobby? Like, do you build models for fun, or are they always like your hobby time is only to build like your tournament stuff?
I would say mostly it's tournament stuff, but like as you've seen, like my Blue Scribes conversion, like I didn't have to do that. I actually had a fully painted one that was the real model. So I did it for a competitive tournament, but I also wanted it to fit into my army narrative and look good, and I enjoyed building and painting that. So, but yeah, I'm not sitting here painting a Votan army because I'm not playing Votan. Like if I'm painting something, it's Chaos Space Marines because that's what I'm playing.
And so your hobby is entirely, or would like a very cool faction, would that like sway into the balance of, okay, well, let's say they release like Dark Mechanicus soon enough, would you? Oh, it looks so cool. I'm gonna build it, and then you kind of hope that it fits into the competitive scene, or do you have to wait for it to be good, and then you go, okay, now these cool models are all mine because now they're good?
It's a hard question. I have established. So obviously I played Custodes all summer, so I have to prioritize because I have such a busy life. Like I coach hockey, I do Canhammer, I do events, I do this, I do Canada captain. I have a wife and kids and stuff, and
you'd like to keep your wife and kids,
yeah. My wife's very supportive. She works long days, and so, but like I can't give up that experience I have with Custodes. And so if I went to Dark Mechanicus, I have to start fresh. Now a guy like, I'm going to name drop Jeremy because he's fun to pick on because we know him, and he probably doesn't mind. He has a lot more spare time than me, so he can pick up a new army, run through 100 games, and then be like, it's not worth it. Whereas I have to really plan what armies I play with and build and paint to fit into my lifestyle in the way that I need to run my year. And so for that reason, yeah, if a Dark Mechanicus army came out, I probably wouldn't even look at it except for as an adversary. and I would stick to kind of my core elements, which are sisters, not so much sisters, but sisters, custodes. I would say like probably orcs and chaos space marines. I do have a large Eldar army, but I feel like the competition on that, and so I'm hedging my bets that if custodes comes out and they're good, I would be hedging my bets that that's the army that I would take to Europe, or for example, Chaos Space Marines or something like that. So I'm trying to prepare myself for my best shot to be a player on the team because I'm not guaranteed a playing spot, as well as to be competitive, right? And it does mean that yeah, when these new flavors, like when Dark Eldar were bent or Eldar were bent, I didn't get to play them because they didn't fit into maybe my long-term goals, and so I sacrificed my short-term tournament winnings to get to a point where I would be better at the WTC, right? So my whole year focuses on that.
I mean, and it makes sense too because it's such a large event. But speaking of the WTC, did you put how much? Let's say the ratio of like effort. How much you put for the Warhammer Championship that was like just a few weeks ago versus what you put for the WTC in terms of like your own prep?
Yeah. So for the WTC, because the new edition dropped, was it June or May? I basically we knew Custodes were good. And I have a huge Custodes collection, and I love them. I don't love them as much as Darren does, but I definitely love them. And so I went hard. I was playing games every other day, every couple of days, and I was playing Custodes list build. Every tournament, I was looking at Custodes list, and I went nonstop. In addition to kind of my regular team duties. Now that got me to about the end of August, and then I came back. I did Capital City Bloodbath. I run that, and I was head referee for that. And then I started switching to Chaos Space Marines because there was a balanced slate. But then Tim ended up taking my Chaos Space Marines to the Guelph tournament because we wanted Jason on Eldar. So I ended up switching back to Custodes. And then after the Guelph tournament, we did a tournament in Montreal with Chaos Space Marines. And basically since then, I didn't play a single game. I think I played one practice game. And my list reflected that. Like I was behind the meta in terms of chaos lists and stuff like that. So I would say like I've done it. And we also had, WTC selection. So we had to interview all 30 candidates. We had to do follow-up interviews. We had to do scoring, meetings. So I would say like I probably did almost no prep for I barely got my army painted. And I had to make list sacrifices to be able to bring that army because their paint score is a lot stricter there.
Yeah, they value a lot the paint, right?
Yeah, and so I didn't want to fly to Atlanta and have models taken off the board, and I also didn't want to stress out. My wife was going away for a week after Atlanta, so I didn't want to like not see my family for 2 weeks. So it's because I'm in the basement painting. So yeah, it definitely I would say I went into Atlanta super cold. Like one rep. It was my first I had one game with 2 rhinos. That's how like out of date I was with Chaos Space Marines. I had played the single rhino list with the 2 chosen, the WTC style list.
But for the hobby people out there, this is like very deep stuff that he's gonna go into, and we're gonna nerd out. But like, bear with us. He's gonna geek out about it. I'm gonna nod and like go, yeah, dude. But nobody in the real world needs to understand this. This is not
exactly
valuable information. This is us geeking out. What's gonna happen here? Sorry, go. Yeah, the 1 rhino versus 2
so
rhino.
I was playing the
3?
1 rhino heavy shooting list, and then I had moved into. I still did the 1 rhino list right up until like October at the Montreal event, and I could feel at the Montreal event people were taking 2 I was falling behind. We still won the event, and I scored like decent, but I was struggling. So I said, okay, I'm going to throw in the 2 rhinos, and then we kind of keep going. And most people were not most, but a lot of people were bringing 3 rhinos and less shooting. I think.
Well, I remember we had that debate where I said like, why are you not playing the 3? And you said, no, I like the full rhinos. And I was like, okay, that makes. I don't like you didn't like the fact that your second rhino had only 5 dudes in it, and you're like, what can I do to like what can I put in there? And I remember that was a big pain point for you because you told me about that, which was I thought was funny.
Yeah, but because I kind of missed the just the standard legionaries, so that wasn't an option for me. I didn't see that coming, but in hindsight, it's like, yeah, you take 3 legionaries, 3 chosen units, 3 rhinos, like that just makes sense, right?
Yeah.
And so I didn't have enough practice games, and so to compare the 2, yeah, and also WTCW, it's like the Invitational. I was there to have fun as well, right?
But that's kind of my next question for somebody that's like really into competing. Does it like hurt you not to be able to prepare? Because I know I would not really give a shit. Like some event where if I don't prepare, I'm like very aware. Like what was the event not last year, but whatever. I went to one tournament and I was like, I'll bring this pile of army. I've never played it. Like before my first game, I never played it. Just I'm going there to have fun. I don't have time to prepare. But you are like a tournament winner, not like a tournament goer like I am. So does that like hurt you, or do you like feel bad maybe about it? Is that?
Yeah, my prime in singles was many years ago, pre-COVID. I was like winning a lot of singles events, and since COVID, I haven't been able to win singles events. I've been doing quite well at team events. I also have a very good team, and I like to play. I've been heavily leaning into like different armies that are off meta, or trying to. I know some of mine have become meta through time, but just to support the team, I want to be the guy that like, we have 4 Eldar players on the team, but I'm the guy that's been like repping the shit that nobody else plays. That's how I was with Orcs and Sisters back when they were. That's why I got into Sisters, was actually because we never had a Sisters player from Canada. Like nobody played them. Now it's like they're more popular. They got a nicer range. It kicks my ego hard, man. And my wife she sat me down and because I was like, I'm very disappointed. She's like, well, you kind of did what you said you were going to do. You said you weren't going to do well. You said your list wasn't ready. And I was like, oh yeah, I did say all those things to you, right? And it doesn't make it hurt less. But yeah, I know it does feel that way. And sometimes it feels like I have something to prove because I'm the captain of the team. So when I come back, it feels like you get like really scrutinized. My performance gets scrutinized heavier than others. And it hurts, but I have a lot of good stuff going on in my life. So I kind of focus on that. And then I always believe in this, like you're allowed to get mad. You have a bad dice roll, a bad game. Get a little bit like, you get that 10 minutes of like, I'm done. And then when you're done, it's what did I make? What did I do wrong? What did I play wrong? How could I play better? What do I need to paint? What do I need to buy? What do I need? Like, how many practice games do I need to get better? And that's what I focus on. And I try to just let that past shit go. And
but it'd be the fuel that drives you a little bit. Like if you don't get like a little bit mad about this stuff, it's never gonna change. Like, or if you don't, you need to do a little bit of a thing about it, right?
So I believe, and you don't have to agree with me. People don't have to agree with me. So I believe it's better. So some people love winning, and some people hate losing. And I personally believe that the people that hate losing are better at competitive games than the people that love winning.
There's a very famous quote, a baseball guy that said that it's like losing feels worse than winning feels good, and like and somebody told me that, and then some. I remember why I know this, because somebody said the same thing about money to me. He said like if you want to know if you're a gambler, it's like, do you feel like winning money feels better than losing money feels bad? And if you feel like winning money feels better, you have a gambler type of personality. I was like, that's very interesting. I have a bigger problem than I imagined right here. But this really translates into some people just feel good about winning because they hate losing so much, or they just don't care, and then they find like some other explanation. I feel like that's like its own like topic of like if I had a show called Canhammer, I would probably talk about that in one episode. That sounds like a very Canhammery.
Maybe we will. Maybe we should. Some people don't agree with it. Some people don't agree at all. So you have to be like, but like I guess my theory comes around like, I've won so many tournaments. I have a shelf behind me full of trophies, and a lot of them are old. I'll give you that. It's like when you win a tournament, you take a picture, you put it on the thing, and then maybe for a day you feel good, and then it's right back to the grind, right? It's not like you don't ride on the glory of it. Whereas I
feel
when you lose a tournament, you carry it with you longer. I carry a loss. I carry this WCW performance. I'm still carrying that emotionally. Whereas like when I won the Montreal team event, which is less stakes and stuff like that, I took a picture of my trophy, put it on Instagram, and honestly, I've never thought about it since.
I do this. I have a box. Like mine is not even a shelf. It's in a box at the store. So I have a box with all the plaques and whatnot, because they don't give you trophies anymore. They give you plaques. So I like it because it takes less space in my box. I can fill more of them. But I do the same thing with them. It's like it's really cool that one time, but then it's like on to the next. But but maybe for some people that's it. You know, like who's that character on TV? Like the back then I could throw the football like over the mountains or whatever, and then he's like reliving his glory days. So, for some people, I guess it's that like that one time they won that one game. You know, I'm 1-0 versus Jason Sparks all time. You know, I mean, I hope I'll never play him again. I beat him once. I never have to play him again.
Yeah.
I live on that glory, man. I will coast on that till never get to play Jason. You know, I'll be happy.
Yeah, I remember I was in a car once coming back from Adepticon, and it was Kieran, who's very blunt. You know Kieran, and we had just won General, I think. I want to say it was with our Ultra Squats army, which was just the last one pre-COVID. And I was like, we should have done. And I remember we're in the car. It's like a 16-hour car ride, and I'm sitting there like, this is what was wrong with our list. I was like, we should have put Thunderfire Cannon in my list, and I had all these changes. And Kieran looks at me and goes, so what, we would have done better than first place? And I was kind of thinking, yes, I think we would have, right? And that's how I think about things. So like, yeah, like, and I'm sure people do as well at the high level. Like, you know, Manny just won the WCW,
sure.
which is awesome. World Championships in Warhammer. I bet you he left that game thinking about list changes and meta changes, or maybe army changes.
Oh,
right?
well, he has to think like his stuff is going to get nerfed to the ground to begin with. So.
And I know John. I heard similar things about John, that he was thinking about list changes as well. And most people would say like, "You made it to the finals. I'm going to start playing your list now." But it's like he's already beyond that list, probably, right? I don't know for sure. I don't know them. I don't know them that well, but you know, I'm assuming they're beyond those lists and they're moving on the next list, and
for sure.
And that's how I like to do as well, right? Like no matter how I do, good or bad, like I spray primed. You can't see it, but there's a third. You could see it kind of in my corner, but it's behind me. It's I spray painted my third Rhino, right? Like I have a tournament in January. I'm getting ready to go. Yeah.
And and this is very, again, like stress. This is very like high-end stuff. Maybe for the more like casual people, like maybe looking into the tournaments, because you make it sound so like such a big commit. Is there like an easy step to like start going to tournaments and doing well, or do you have to go like hard in the paint?
So I don't mean this really bad for anyone. I really don't. And I think a lot of hobbies are like that. Like if you want to do things good, it's not that hard to get in the top half of events, in my opinion. Because when you go to Capital City, and I ref it, right? At least half the people, they're just there to drink beer with the few toys that they want to paint. They don't give a shit. There's only really like 20% of the event that actually has toon list and is playing to compete. Now, some events like the WCW is probably 100% of the people did that, right? Or most of it. But at the average event, especially in Canada, if you want to, you can easily make top half just with a couple reps, taking a strong list, more of a meta list. And you don't have to go hard in the pants to do well. But to break into that top 10 or 20%, I think you have to go hard. You have to play weekly. You have to play good players weekly. You have to take the best armies, the best units, the best lists. And you have to be inventing modified lists. Because one of the problems is when you net list is if you're near the
always
end of
one
the
step
battle wave,
behind,
people
right?
know. Yeah, you're always a step behind. Yeah. So you need to be able to innovate on your own a little bit. And that just takes time playing. But I would say, yeah, like do whatever you want to do. Don't make the pressure for yourself, and just be realistic. Like, you know, don't sit there and be like, hey, I play one RTT a month and I play one game a week against my neighbor, and then I'm gonna go and win tournaments. Like, you just have to be realistic with what you want and what you're willing to do. And I have a really addictive personality, and so like when I do something, I do it hard, right? So, or try to, right?
I get that a lot.
Kids.
I have a hard time like half-assing stuff, so I have to like pick my projects and go like all in on them. I do that like natural. It's not like because I want something out of it. It's just how I work. Do you feel like this kind of people do better than the people that can just like coast? Or
yes, yeah. Look at Francois, right?
No, you can't compare. Francois is a machine. You cannot compare. Like he's not.
That's my point. He's all in 40K. Francois, yeah. I don't know when it was. He's been co-host of my show. There was a day when that guy decided he was all in 40K, and he paints every army. He paints all the best armies. and some that he likes. Like he paints it all. He plays games 2 to 3 times a week, and he goes hard 2 tournaments a month. And Francois went from like I don't know where he was, middle of the pack to top of the pack in a matter of like a year or two, right?
Oh,
Not even maybe not even that long, right?
no,
It's
oh
hard to
yeah.
tell with
When he
COVID because there was
started
a
to
gap there,
like,
right?
I want to play 40K for real too. Like I'm winning all the GTs all the time. It was a very quick. Well, it looked quick. I mean, from the outside in, probably for him, it was like, why am I not?
I think it was a couple years, like because he has like 14 fully painted armies, even at his speed of painting, because he's more of an army like get it on the table guy. It still takes years to paint that many
Oh
freaking
yeah.
models, right? Like, so I think that's a prime example of like, so yeah, he's all in 40K. I think as I've gotten older, I'm a little bit busier. I've made some mistakes, so I've gotten a lot better about prioritizing and yeah, cutting out. Like I used to play Age of Sigmar too, even if I only did 2 or 3 tournaments a year with it, that's gone. I cut that out a few years ago. I used to, play Blood Bowl as well. I would go to Blood Bowl tournaments, the odd one or two, and I didn't go to many, but I'd play in a Blood Bowl league. I had to cut that out, right? So you have to decide what's important to you and what you want to do. And if you want to be good at 40K, well, then 40K has to be more important than video games. It has to be more important than Blood Bowl, than Age of Sigmar, than all that other stuff.
I mean, it makes what fascinates me the most about like because you say it matter of factly, and you say it from a place that kind of knows or like I did it and it works. Is I feel like a lot like myself included is like, well, 40K is a game. Like I'm not gonna treat it as, but the result you want is something that's more than it's a game. So you should treat it as something different. Where a lot of like if you say the same thing about chess for some reason about chess it works and people just like don't really doubt it. Oh yeah, you play chess all the time. You read the books and whatnot, and you say that about 40K and you're like, you crazy man, this is a game. Well, so is chess.
So's football, so's soccer, so's hockey, so's I was flicking through YouTube the other day, and I didn't know this, but they have puzzle tournaments, right? Where people show up in a giant room. They look like the one tournament I saw was like in the same hall in Chicago that we use for Adepticon, and they're in there having puzzle tournaments
Yeah.
where they sit there and they build, and those people are playing puzzles all day, and they're following systems and
Yeah,
strategies.
there's a system to build a puzzle. Like how.
And it's bigger than 40K. There's
Oh.
more people. They're bigger events, and yeah. So I think like anybody can do that. And if you're happy saying it's just a game, I don't care. Well, yeah, it's just a game to you. But
But
like,
if
it's
if
not
saying
wrong
it's
to
just a
want
game
more.
and then you're really salty inside, maybe that's where you need to like reassess, right? Like, because some people are just happy with it's a game and I'm having fun, but some people that makes them fucking miserable that they're bad at or not getting what they want. That not bad at not getting the result they want. And again, just to make kind of a quick parallel, how do you see that into painting? Because I get a lot of flack. Maybe you get a lot of flack or pressure from like your gaming side. I get the same thing from painting. Oh yeah, but Max, you paint all the time. So when you talk about like painting and for you it's not the same. How does that translate for you? Maybe that's like you enjoy obviously painting, but maybe that's not like your whole shtick. Like if you stop playing, would you still paint minis like in your spare time?
It's hard to. I go through stints, right? Like I painted a whole Flames of War army. I've never played Flames of War. I painted a whole Epic army. I haven't played Epic in probably 15 years. So it's different things. It's hard to say whether I would or how much I would paint. Maybe I'd paint more. You're coming from the angle of like you're a professional painter. Is that what people are saying, or?
Hard to do, or just like for you it's easy, so painting is easy for me, so my stance on it is kind of different maybe.
Well, nothing's easy, right?
Yeah,
It's
oh,
all about habit forming, and it goes the same with anything, right? If you form, my wife had this great book. I can't remember the title of it, but it was something about habits, and it's like it's all about forming habits. If you want to be really good at painting and you want to paint a lot, you need to have a routine or you need to have a habit of painting. So instead of sitting down on the couch and pulling your phone out, you sit down at a painting table and you start painting every day, right? One of the habits that I'm working on and I've gotten okay at is, well, not this last weekend, but like when I go on business trips, when you get to the hotel, you go straight to the gym right away. You don't even like you go to your room, drop your stuff, otherwise you don't go.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
I go on lots of business trips these days, and you don't go. And so the same is with painting, the same is with Warhammer, right? Like, you got to sit down and schedule your 40K games. You got to sit down and make sure you're playing, and you got to plan out that you got to paint. And I think like if you talk to a lot of the guys with really beautiful armies, they paint every day. And some of them wake up at 5 a.m. and paint before their kids get up, and some of them paint at 8 o'clock at night when their kids go to bed, and some paint on lunchtime. I used to play with a guy in Burlington, and I can't remember his name. He would paint on the GO train. And no, most people would be like, that's crazy. People are going to look at you. It's moving. But no, he used to use his hand as the wet palette, I guess, your skin.
Yeah.
And he would paint. He would bring like, I don't know how many, a couple models, and he would just paint a couple models every day. For me, I have problems with painting in that I have old armies that I painted, and the competitive me is like, I'm just going to add a few units to that to make it competitive, and then I try to mimic my old paint scheme, which is not that nice. So if you look at an army that I started fresh, like Custodes, I did a couple tests. I think that's one of my better looking armies, but it's because I started fresh recently, right? Whereas my like Iron Warriors, I'm trying to replicate an old paint scheme so it fits in, and I don't think they look as good as I would like them to do. I almost wish I would have moved to a new Chaos Space Marine chapter to kind of yeah.
I do this a lot. I have a hard time. For example, my Custodes was a prime example. I painted my Custodes in 10 hours or 11 hours on stream the weekend before Adepticon. And I was like, if we're not finishing this army today, I'm not playing. Like, this is the one time I have to paint this army before I leave. So if it's not like getting painted all today, and they were painted and they looked okay. And then if I say, I painted this in like 11 hours, people are like, for 11 hours, this is nice. But then I bought like a lot more Custodes, and I was like, well, I have to paint them at the same like dumb standard, right? And so I collected like, I think it's probably 4,000 points or more of like these Custodes all painted like crap. And then I sold them all to Dan, the Red Dragon. Dan
Morris.
Dan Morris, yeah. And like he was pretty happy with them. And I told him, they were painted like super fast, but it's a large collection. Just because I don't want to buy more Custodes and paint in that scheme. So I started recently. I bought like a box of because I love the Custodes. I think they look cool. The big dumb dudes in armor. I like them. And I started repainting them, and they're like just like slightly better. But now at least they're to a standard that I'm happy with versus like continuing or just like starting over my 5,000 points or whatever. That's kind of the problem of having a collection, but you need a collection to play the game, right? Like it's much easier with a collection.
If you have a big collection of medium painted models that you can pump out quick, that's the ideal situation, I think, from a competitive standpoint. And I've just come to accept that. Yeah. Like I have a couple armies that I really don't like, and I wish I should maybe sell, like my demons and stuff. Like if and I'm starting to repaint some of them when I use them, but
I mean, but that's also a good way to go to do it like incrementally rather than just like fire sale and then buy the entire thing and doing it as you go, or like upgrading as you go. Like, this week I'm tired of my like Iron Warrior Legionnaire. Let's just buy like 3 boxes of CSM of the new one, repaint them, and then you sell the crappy. There's like a way to approach this where it's not like a chore, maybe.
Yeah, and GW has done a lot of like trimming of the range too. So what you find is your large, especially somebody like me who's been playing so long, our older collections get chopped. One of the things I'm kind of jealous of, like, not jealous of, but Francois does that I thought was really cool is like he would paint like a 2,000 point White Scars army, and then he would also paint like a 2,000 point Dark Angel army, and then like a 2,000 point like Black Templar. He doesn't have Black Templars. What's the Iron Hands? And so he's recently switched to like a large collection of his Teal Marines. But I always thought that was really cool, right? Where it was like, if you're playing Sisters, paint a 2,000 point army of Sisters. They could be blue, like mine are blue.
Yeah, Marines have like this stigma of like if it's not the right color, it's a problem.
But even still, what's wrong with having like a 2,000 point Orc army and then painting a whole new different 2,000 point Orc army, right? Like, because what I find is what you do is you have all these models. I have this huge collection. I go, okay, I want to update my Chaos Space Marine army, so I'm going to make them Iron Warriors to match. And then I start painting it, and it turns out I'm painting I'm literally like reusing a paint scheme so I could reuse 2 models because I'm painting 1,800 points of new models. Whereas I could have done a brand new like Black Legion army that would have been super quick with contrast paints and a lot less like trimming.
Yeah, all these chevrons and the Azer.
Yeah. And I suck at hazard stripes. I fucking hate doing them.
Hey, Chris, I'm gonna let you in on a little secret. Everybody sucks at Azer stripe. That's
They suck. I'm like, I did my Rhino before WCW, and I said, fuck it, I'd rather have black doors, and I repainted all
Yeah,
the
there you
doors
go. All
black.
black, all black, everything.
was
There
like,
we go.
but you know what I mean? Like, so you get in these habits where it's like, you keep expanding, like I had this 500 point sister army from Adepticon, and I put a lot of my heart and soul into that 500 points. And then when I went to play sisters competitively, I had to now paint like 5,000 points because I wanted 3 of everything in this crazy scheme that didn't use contrast paints, that didn't use like a lot of the modern
Yeah.
techniques because it was painted like 15 years ago. And it was like I never finished my sister's army. I just got them to like barely tabletop, looking like shit. Whereas if I would have like redone a 2000, like just redone the sister, started fresh, I would have been in a way better position, right? I think painting wise. And you get burned out too trying to replicate an ancient paint scheme that was like
painting is hard. Like to begin, like sitting down and having to paint is kind of a hard like habit to get into. So if you hate what you're doing and like you find like no joy into it, it's even harder. Whereas if at least like you're happy about like something, like you have to find some motivation somewhere. Like not like I need to drink these 3 Red Bulls and then sit down and like because it will never come if you do that and you hate what you're doing. Like if you hate what you're doing and you hate the end result as well, like some part needs to be good, right? You either like love the process or love the end result. So then the process is a fucking chore, or you love what you're doing and then I love playing 40K, but at the end of the tournament I lose. But or the other way around. So you need something to keep you happy in this. Otherwise, it's too much. Even if you hate painting.
Yeah, my custodies were like that. Like I thoroughly enjoyed the finished product. I felt really good about it.
I think so because you sent me a lot of like pictures, like, "Hey Max, look, I finished it." Like when you were doing them for Depticon, I think it was.
Yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed that. Yeah, and like I had the system with my custodies where I was like, it takes me 2 days to do a custodies unit from start to finish, right? If they were all built or whatever, like different, but it would be like day 1 would be paint all the blocky colors and then like do this, wash or whatever. And then day 2 was the highlights. And so I was able to be like, I need 10 units done for this event. I need 20 days. And I only need to paint like it's like an hour or 2 a day, right? So I would like bang and I would every day I would feel good because it'd be like something new would happen.
And then you stuck to your routine too as well.
I did. If you know, I have like 6,000 points of custodies done, and it's like crazy, and it felt really good. Whereas I think like doing 1 unit at a time and to completion is really important. Like if you and so I have this rule where I have like this closed closet where I put all my not completed models. So if I have a model and it's like I just have one color to do, it's 90% done, it'll never get on my glass shelves. It has to stay in there. And so I get this huge satisfaction from completing full units.
Yeah.
So I've changed the way I painted. Like for this WCW, I didn't finish about half my army. I got pretty close. And like it felt terrible, right? Whereas like the individual, when I finish individual units, I can put them on my glass shelf, I feel a lot better. One of the things that I did during COVID that really helped me paint a lot of stuff is I tried to do for about a year, I did a post a day. And so I would do 1 model a day. And so if I painted 10 units in a weekend, I then had 10 days of posts and I would schedule them out. And that really helped me stay motivated because that's how I got all my epic stuff done, all my Flames of War stuff. Because I'd be like, I had 2 kind of projects going. I had 40K ones, which obviously you can't paint a 40K squad every day. Like you'll burn out. But you could do like a Flames of War squad one day, and then the next day release another picture of a Flames of War squad that you did, and then day 3 was that 40K squad that you've been working on for 3 days.
Exactly.
Yeah. And so I had like multiple projects, and I always had a Flames of War, an epic at that time, epic, and I had a building project, and I had a painting one every day, and I would just rotate through, and I would do an hour or 2 a day, and I got the most done painting in that kind of short period, like a year or 6 months, whatever it was I did.
I liked it because you're what I get from this is you're a big like systems guy where you build like this system that works for you. Do you write this down or is this all like in the old brain?
No. So I'm very system approach even at work. So I'm very big into like processes. Like I just implemented a new like project planning. Like I took over a department maybe a year ago and I implemented a huge project planning process. Yeah, I think that's very important to structure out your day. Very detailed calendars. Like if you want to paint, nothing gets you to paint like putting it on your calendar, right?
Oh yeah.
And it has to be deliberate, and you have to do what you say. That's the biggest problem.
Sticking to it, like sticking to
Yeah.
whatever you're like committed to doing is the hardest part to like kind of drill, especially because art is like such a free form type like miniature art is still art. There's some debates out there, but the people that are not saying it's art are wrong. Then I got you.
You just got to prioritize it, man. Like if you're saying like, Max, it's a lot of work for me to paint, and oh man, I can only paint like an hour a week, then honestly, it's just not a high priority in your life, and that's okay, man. Just don't be so hard on yourself. Like, you just want to paint an hour a week. That's fine.
Yeah, do the best out
it's
of that
lower
1
on your-
hour, and then be happy with this. And if you want more, find time to make a second hour in the week. Cut 1 hour of like whatever jerking off, or
It could be that. Could be like, I'm sure that if one thing that I read recently, and I've been trying to do, so I haven't really successfully done it, is like we tend to operate in like 30-minute or 1 hour chunks as human beings. Like that's the way that our schedules are kind of operated. Like, I'll put it 11 and a lot of high productive people allegedly, I don't have firsthand knowledge, like they split it down into smaller chunks, right? So instead of just being like, well, I'll do an hour of this and an hour of that, and I'll clean my room for an hour and I'll clean this for an hour, do less but do more. Like, schedule, be like smaller chunks and just kind of schedule more in, right? And then you might end up getting more done.
Yeah, well, I mean, the most classic one is 25 minutes of work, 5 minutes of nothing, and then 25 minutes of work. But there's all kind of that. I think that a lot of people they work different. Like this thing is called the Pomodoro technique. It works for some people, but there's also a big chunk of like I forget the technical name, but if you stop doing something, like if you're writing whatever. If you're writing something and you stop to read emails, getting back into the flow and into the state of mind that you were doing, it's going to take you like 15 to 20. So for some people doing like large chunks, like I had a friend that would paint for like his entire like Sunday. Like on Sundays, he would wake up, sit down, paint, and then like emerge on Monday morning. Where am I? What year is it? Having painted, I can never do this. Like rarely, if ever. But for him, that worked, and doing like the 25 minutes thing would never ever work. So I think you have to find like something that works for you in that regard. And I love it because you seem to have this down like very like this works for me, and I do this, and it's very methodical.
I'm trying. I'm not perfect, right? Like I have. So when I'm telling you guys this, it's not like you're not going to come and be like, Chris has all his shit together. I'm just constantly striving.
Oh,
for this.
Chris, I think it's safe to say nobody taught you had all your shit together. I mean, you're on this podcast here with me. You start with 2 strikes here, bud.
I understand. And yeah, you got to do what works for you. I can also sit and paint. So my biggest problem with painting is starting. Once I start, I can like 4 hours can evaporate, right? And I just kind of like, I was listening to a podcast and it was about like an MMA fighter, and he was like, if you train every day for like 30 minutes, at the end of the week, you're doing a couple hours. Whereas if you train really hard one day for like an hour, and then you can't then work out for 2 days because you're sore, etc. Like, you're actually doing less over the course. I don't know how. Anyway, that was a terrible example, but so I've been trying to think of that philosophy. Like, if I can do a little bit every day. Yeah. Because the problem is for me, and this person that paints all day Sunday, great for them. When I paint a full day, it's a scramble for a tournament, and I am burnt out afterwards.
That, or it's a lot. Like, let's say you do this every Sunday, right? Like, we both paint 7 hours a week. I paint 1 hour a day. You do this on the Sunday thing. But then on that one Sunday, your wife has something planned, and you can't paint. Oh, well, your 7 hour turned into 0. If I have something on a Sunday, like my wife gets me something. I don't have a wife, by the way. Don't be alarmed, ladies. If something comes up on a Sunday, if Chris's wife has something planned for me on that Sunday while Chris is painting, I lose 1 hour. So I still painted 6 hours. So getting these big, some people, it works fine for them because that one day, they're going to turn their phone off. They have no commitment to nobody, and they're going to paint and be happy. But, for a lot of people, it's the other thing. But definitely find what works for you and like realize what works for you, because I would love to be able to be that 7 hour on Sunday kind of guy. I am not. Like, my lifestyle does not support that. Like, it ain't me as much as I would like to.
One of the things I'm really focusing on with my painting specifically is I need to feel satisfaction in completion. That's very important. If I have too many half-finished projects on the go, it really demotivates me. So that's why I'm trying to do more like fuck the rest of like. So even when I was painting for WCW, there was like entire units that I fully finished. Like I was like, I'm gonna finish this unit. I don't care if it means the rest of my army is less done. It means, but I'm gonna finish these 3 units. I'm gonna post them on Instagram.
And sometimes that gives you the motivation to finish the other. When you feel like,
keep
oh,
going, yeah.
this is too much, like, okay, I'm gonna finish this small thing, and then that will get. I do that with larger projects where at some point I'm like, okay, man, this project is like, it's taking a toll. Let's just finish this like small chunk of it, and then you look back at the rest of the big project, and then without like that one unit or that one hero or whatever, and then go, okay, and then you break it. That's a very very good strategy. Like trying to complete something when you're feeling out of it.
Yeah, and at work, I'm working on this new, like that project. It's like agile. People probably know what that is, but
Real people, real job know what that is. Yeah. For sure.
So one of the things that I really think is important for human beings and projects and getting work done is people tend to schedule too much stuff. So I have this new motto that I kind of say, it's plan less, finish more. So it's better to plan less things but actually finish them than to have, like, you think of a handyman, right? Like let's say you're renovating your house and you have things all over the place, right? And it's just ongoing and ongoing. I believe it's better to go in, do one room at a time, and finish that room. And sometimes you can't, right? You're laying flooring, you have to do the whole thing. But when I was renovating my old house, it was like one bathroom at a time. Go in there. I have a weekend. I would just, gut it, drywall, new toilet, new sink, blah, blah, blah. It wasn't a major reno, but
yeah, but still.
And then you were finished. That room's finished. And then all the tools are away. Everything's clean for another week. And then the next weekend, okay, I had a closet I gutted to run ductwork through. That's getting done this weekend, right? And so I'm starting to do that. And I'm doing it at work. And I'm noticing super huge increase in efficiencies with I'm actually scheduling my staff to do less work, but they're doing more work.
Well, they're completing more work instead of,
Yeah, it's really interesting. It's a really interesting concept. And I think if you apply that to painting where, like, smaller projects, more reasonable time frames, but actually finish them. I think if you did that and you looked at a full year, you'd end up having more painted over the whole year. That's my opinion. But
this is great because this is something I've done like unconsciously for a long time, where I would apply something from like what I call real life and then transpose it into miniature painting. And for me, that yielded a great result of like things that were not common in miniature painting, like color blocking or like having a big structure, like all these like random, like there's a programming thing called a rubber duck technique, and it's the stupidest thing. It's like programmers talk to a rubber duck to explain their code because they find a mistake when they're talking out loud. It is the dumbest thing, but I realized that I learned a lot of painting by talking to myself or talking on stream to people, and that somehow I would block on something and I was like, oh, this is where I'm fucking up because now I can't explain what I'm trying to do here, or what's happening is I can't explain. So this is my like sticking point. But that thing comes from like a programming video of something, and then
programming. This agile thing comes from computer programming. Really smart people in that field, I guess, pushing the envelope.
A bunch of nerds. That's what they are. And on that note,
I have an interesting example of that before we move on. Is I had a good friend, a good friend of mine, Mike Butcher. We actually won an Adepticon Age of Sigmar overall. Like, he painted this beautiful army, and then I did like complimentary Stormcast Eternal detachment to go with his like super converted like he won the painting points.
Yeah.
But I was able to get a Stormcast army to a level that kind of blended in and kind of worked with him. And one of the things he told me is because he went to art school after he retired from the military. And I remember, like, in Warhammer, we just wash things. We just use black wash or brown wash. And he was like, he was talking about, I don't know if he was talking miniature theory or something with his professor. He's like, why don't you mix washes? And I guess in the art community, they mix washes, like do a black with a little bit of red, a little bit of green, and mix it in and go for that. And so we did like a mix. I still have the jar behind me. It's like a mix. It's half purple, half black to kind of darken it down. And that's kind of one of those things where like miniature painters think they have everything figured out, and we live in this unique world, and we ignore a lot of the other art world. Like when you look at really good Warhammer painters, they talk about like art classes and art wheels and like they take all the stuff that these like artists have been doing for thousands of years and apply it to miniature painting, right?
Well, that's what one thing I like
is a little bit cocky. Yeah,
I like it because it's the two things that I want. You can do that, but miniature painting is also something very simple that you don't need the fucking like university color. Like color theory is like a full class at like universities. it is painful. I took a lot of I went to, it was one of the few college classes I remember. But now that I know it, I'm like super happy. But color theory is like something that Warhammer strips away from you if you don't want to learn it, because you just look at the box. And some other guy that did that course tells you paint this color, this color, and this color because it works. So you have kind of the liberty of going both ways of like, I want to learn art and everything, and I'm going to learn art through miniature painting, or I just want to paint my soldier. I think it's like the best of both worlds, where you get to choose what you want to do.
Yeah, I agree. It's interesting. Interesting take on it.
I'm really.
I haven't, until very recently. I never considered myself an artist.
I tell a lot of people don't.
In Warhammer, no, we just paint miniatures. We play a game. But somebody said that to me. It was like I think it was like a nurse or something that my wife worked with. I can't remember. She's like, "Oh, you're really artsy," and I was like, "What?"
One of my best buds, he used to be not a good painter. He would not like it, but then he would meet girls and be like, "Yeah, I'm an artist. I paint these little these little miniatures." And if, like, for everybody else, he was like a terrible painter, but with the girls, he was an artist. And it always fascinated me, because like in our scene, he was like, "No, man, he doesn't paint." Yeah, but to the outside world, it was art, because it's a little, but we consider it like something different.
Well, we don't consider it, but we are artists. Like I spend more time doing art. There's that Australian channel that the guy was like this huge famous artist, Jazza, I think his name is. I don't know if you ever heard of him. He's this huge. He's like one of the biggest art channels on YouTube, I think. And then he did a few Warhammer episodes, and then he branched off a Warhammer channel, kind of off of that, like a painting channel. And he used to, like, he also would call us like artists and stuff. And that's where I was kind of like, oh, what we do is art, right? But
yeah, it's a very specific style of art, but it is, instead of using like a sheet of paper, you're using a little figure. But it's kind of the same thing. But it's also, I can paint miniatures to a very high level, but I could not paint the Sistine Chapel, or like. I tell this to people all the time, like, my art comes through miniatures, because if you put me in front of a blank sheet of paper, no art is going to happen, like, right there.
Maybe. We also do, like, craft projects, building tables, building boards, display boards. I know they're falling out of, we used to build tons of huge display boards and, like, lots of techniques with that. So it's just interesting that we don't identify. Like, I think, like, I identify as a gamer.
Yeah,
I don't identify.
But that's a dude thing too.
You identify as an artist, and a lot of people, like, they say, like, what you identify of is what hurts when people criticize you. And so, like, because I identify as a gamer, you could probably say, "Hey, Chris, your Iron Warriors look like dog shit," and it doesn't really bother me that much. Whereas, like, you, I think if I was like, "Hey, your Death Guard look like dog shit," you'd be like, "Fuck you, man." You know what I mean? So.
Oh, 100%. For the record, my Death Guard does look like dog shit. But dog shit with pretty turquoise on it.
They're covered in poo, yeah.
No, but this is very fascinating. The way that you said it, like what you get criticized. Can you say it again? I want to learn that shit.
So people wrap up different topics in their identity, and so a guy like me wraps up gaming in his identity probably more than you
painting.
do. So if you were to criticize my gaming, it would hurt me way more than criticizing my painting.
Even though you're a way better gamer than you are, what you identify as is what you get. This is so cool.
If you identify, and this is all done internally, right? So you have to figure out what you identify as, and then that when somebody criticizes, like, so I think I'm a good parent. So, like, if somebody would say, like, "Oh, you let your kids do that, that's bad parenting," that hurts, right? Because I think of myself as a really good parent, and it blinds kind of being open to criticism. And once you know that, you can then be like, well.
Am I really, and then consider it from outside the rage of, like, being told that you're a shitty parent. Yeah, I understand. I get it.
So, like, because like, if I was to go to you, Max, and be like, "Oh, Max, you suck at the game," you're gonna be like, "Yeah, I do," because you don't identify as a good gamer, right? Who's giving the criticism is an aspect too, but what I'm more talking about is, like, if I know that you value painting over gaming, when I criticize your painting, I should approach it from a softer, nicer approach, right? Because it has more of an impact than if I was to criticize your gaming, right? So that's where I'm coming from, is like, you definitely have to be cognizant of that. But yeah, you're right. Like, if somebody,
but it's really hard, because how do I know that you feel like you're a gamer and not, like, maybe you poured your heart out, like, probably you should not criticize people, like
So
altogether.
how you would know that I identify as a good gamer would be you would go up to me and say, "Hey, Chris, you did really shitty at the WCW last weekend." And then if I shut down and don't engage with you, or if I kind of say, "Okay, thanks, man," and then we don't talk anymore, that's probably why you can tell that you hurt me, right,
Oh,
or
for
something
sure.
like
for
that.
sure.
I'm not a psychologist, man. This is just shit.
No,
that
no,
I
I
like
know.
think of.
Yeah. This is like
So-
this is the pinnacle of like 5 cent psychology right there. What we're doing.
But that's my theory on why some things hurt people more than others. Like that was like the difference between you and me would be like, yeah, how you would criticize my
for sure.
painting doesn't have to be as sensitive as how you criticize my gaming, and same with you, right? How I criticize your painting is more softer and sensitive than how I would criticize your gaming. But you should always be a respectful, nice person.
Yeah.
I'm not saying be an asshole,
It
but-
starts with the little asterisks of like, in a world of like respect, or like if I ask for feedback, right? Like, hey,
And it
do you
doesn't
like
matter
this
if you're a good
model?
painter.
Or hey, what'd you think of that game? Well, I mean, now it changes.
But if you ever get somebody with like a really ugly army, and
All
you're,
the time.
you're like, oh, that
I
looks like
manage.
dog
I've
shit.
been in.
and you
I've
go up
been
to
in retail store for 20 years, man. I've seen all kinds of crap.
But
Like,
if you go up
what-
to somebody, you're like, your army doesn't look that nice, and they get really upset.
No, I never
that guy
said- no, I
might,
never
might
said
think
that.
that he's a good painter, right? And
Oh,
maybe
yeah.
he's trying, right? So
Yeah, I never tell people that unless they ask me like for very specific like criticism on something. I never say a bad thing because you never know.
that's the thing. Like when you're criticizing people's stuff, you got to be careful with that. And I find painters in general criticize really harshly.
Oh yeah.
Like,
yeah.
because art, that's an art thing, maybe. Like, I did some paint judging, and like, oh yeah, it's pretty crazy. But like, I just like a thought for people out there, right? Like, you never regret being kind to somebody, but you always regret being mean,
Yeah.
right? Or you may regret being mean, maybe not always.
And also, and so the same thing. Like painting comes from like a different place. Like you never know the intent behind the person. It's like even if it's not how I would do things, you can't. It's the same thing as like gaming. Like maybe I'm not looking for feedback with this like piece of shit army that I'm pushing around. Like I came here to drink beer and hang out with my friend, and maybe like you going like, well, yeah, this is a shit army and you're never gonna win. Like some people do that, after a game. Like you play a game
Yeah,
with
they
them, and then they
shouldn't.
go
Yeah.
instantly, oh yeah, well you did this move, and then you bring this unit, and this is a shit unit. Hey man, I just finished painting this thing. I wanted to try it. Like chill is it's kind of the same thing. Where like you have no idea. Like maybe I bought this fucking army used. I didn't paint a single thing, and then you start going off on like some random painter from the internet that's like. He doesn't know. Maybe I like the fucking like turquoise on this army or the purple on this other army. Maybe you don't like
Yeah.
purple. It's
Yeah,
weird.
you shouldn't give people advice without them first soliciting it. Like people ask. I think that's a great point, right? Because you don't know what my intention is, and maybe I know, right? Maybe I know what I did wrong, or maybe
Yeah.
I think I know, and you're like criticizing, like. I had an incident like that once where it was like a guy was doing it, but he's kind of doing it like to be a dick, and I ended up I kind of was like, well, I won the game, so it is what it is. Like, he was giving me advice. I was like, well, I won the game, and I walked. And I regret saying that because it was mean, but that was a long time ago, and but I definitely know what you're saying. Like, you don't know what people want out of their gaming event, how they see themselves as painters or gamers. So wait for them to ask, or ask them, hey man, do you want me to go through a few things with you? Because
Yeah.
it helps me to talk out what you should do, because it makes me better for my next game or something, right? And you can really spin it that way.
Oh, that's always the thing. Or like when people like comment, like whenever they show me something, I'm like, yeah, it's really cool. And then usually I wait for them to say like, do you have feedback or something? Otherwise, I just say, yeah, it's pretty cool, or I like this. I always say like what I like about a mini. No matter like, I always find something that I like. I say I like this, and then if I'm not like prompted to say anything else, I'm never gonna mention like any. I do that with painting all the time. That's my thing, and I'm assuming people do that with gaming. I would assume that people do that with gaming, but I feel like they don't, and they just like tell you how they beat you. Do you feel like it's
Not
because
at
they
the
want to
high
feel
levels.
like good about themselves? Like I beat you
Not
because
at
I
the-
did this super play over there because I'm smart and you're not.
Yeah, that's an ego thing. I find like most people I play, you have a natural discussion, like, and you'd be like, well, what if I did this? What if I did that? Is that better? And I can immediately tell whether I want to talk to somebody or not just by saying like, hey man, if I did this turn one, do you think it would have helped me win the game?
Oh yeah,
And
and
if
then
they
by
go-
their
and
initial
if they go-
response.
no, I would have just done this, and like there are some people out there with like every move you say,
Oh
they're
yeah.
like, oh, I would have just done this, and beat you, and they don't really engage in the conversation. So I try to like, yeah, like,
You nod politely. You go,
well, then I'll go, okay, cool. But when you talk to a really good player, like, so I had a great game against Nick Notavati at the WCW, and it was obvious that his list was better than mine. And at the end, he was like, "Yeah, I tried Celeste. This is what she did for me. I didn't like her. That's why I took her out." And he had very like intelligent things and very like sincere things to say about his list. And he was like, "Oh, if you would have screened this Rhino better in the middle, I might not have been able to get there." And I was like, "Yeah, I tried, but I rolled the 1." I said, "So I guess I could have been positioned better." And he said, "Yeah, you did roll the 1, and but he says if you would have screened that out and I don't roll the 6 this way, it's a different game as well, right?" And we had these like really intelligent. It wasn't like, "Well, what if I would have done this, Nick? Would that change things?" You would be like, "Oh yeah, it would have impacted me greatly." But some people just be like, "No, I would have just done this, and you couldn't have done." And it's like, well, we're not going to have a conversation now, right?
And I feel you really touched on it. Nick is a very good like mirror of this. I think he's gotten like maybe softer in the recent year because he's now the face of Games Workshop streams a lot of times. But if you're a nice person to Nick, and you say like intelligent like things about like the game, he's gonna respond in an intelligent way. But if you say something dumb, he's gonna make you feel all the weight of that dumb comment like instantly. Yeah, I have a couple of friends like felt that with him because what they said was like inherently dumb, but they said it in a very confident way to Nick Navati, and then he go, "Nah, you're stupid." But some other times, you have like this great conversation. So I think he's a great
Like,
example of exactly this. Of like if play stupid games, get stupid prizes. Like you're gonna get exactly that with him.
Yeah, I enjoyed my game with him. I learned a lot. His list was superior to mine, and he knew how to use it. He had more practice games, and I thought it was really amazing because like some of the conclusions that I had come to about my list, he had told me about his conclusions, which were similar to mine, but he had them in his practice games prior to the event. Right?
Yeah. Oh, that's yeah. He's seen
It was
exactly.
really interesting. That happened to me a few years ago at WTC. There was this build that I really, really liked, and it was 3 knights and 3 exorcists. So it was all toughness 8. This was a couple editions ago.
I remember this list. I know exactly the one.
Yeah, and we tested it, and it sucked, right? And I remember going to the WTC, and the Scottish guys were playing it. They're like, "Oh, it's all," and then it did not perform well. And I remember being like, "Thank God we tested that list out, right?" Because we were so set on bringing it. And on the other, vice versa, we got burned because we took the repulsor list. And I had used it, but we took the repulsor list and nobody else did. And they were like, "Yeah, we tested on these tables and it doesn't work." And so it was like, that's like kind of the two things I try to always think about, right? Is like, don't try to outsmart yourself, right? And
Oh yeah, for sure.
Just
And
get reps in.
you said that about your WCW list as well. Like I tried to be cute with it and didn't work. And I think it was Riley told me not to be cute. I tried to get cute and then it didn't work out, right?
Yeah, I took a lot of like lone op characters trying to hold objectives in the open, but I think lone op characters is figured out now. People can just take them out. Nothing beats just screening. And like with all the MSU now, before people would have to dedicate too much resources to kill a lone op because they'd have to get close. Whereas nowadays everybody's taken so many different units and so much MSU that there's more opportunities to kind of throw units away.
Yeah,
into
the
these
Death
things.
Star to MSU ratio really changed in like 6 months of this edition.
2
so
months.
Far?
No, ever since the balance slate in like September.
Oh, you think it's the data slate that changed it?
Well, Votan went down huge in points. They're a huge
and they're
MSU
MSU.
force.
It checks out.
They're not the only one. The Eldar with the nerfs to the Wraith
Yeah, the
Knights,
big constructs. Yeah.
Yeah, it freed up a shit ton of points to go into more units. And they also and people still now they take the Wraith Guard, but they still. So Eldar are very small armies regardless, but yeah, I just feel that way that there's just more units. Whereas when I was playing my Custodes in August,
It was like
I
4 units,
I could
right?
hit. Yeah, well, that was my army, but I was hitting units like 6, 7 units, and it was like I can kill, take it, and then kill another unit, and you're almost tabled, right? Whereas now I think the Custodes struggle just going through stuff, right?
Yeah,
Their
because there's
characters
so
are way
much
too
stuff, so little turns, so much stuff to kill. All right, Chris, this has been a great chat, and I feel like we have like content for like 6 episodes, and still a lot untalked about. Where can the people find you? What's this podcast? When does it come out? Is it live? Tell me about all of the podcasts.
So yeah, we started up a podcast. We're on episode 2 of the reboot, we call it. And so we started. We do it every 2 weeks. It's Logan, myself, and Francois Lalonde. And yeah, so it'll come out every 2 weeks on iTunes primarily. It also, I think, goes on Spotify. It doesn't go on YouTube yet. We haven't figured. Well, we know how to do that, but we're just focusing on the fundamentals right now. So you can check that out. It's just Canhammer. You search for that on podcast app, you'll get it. Should be pretty good. Me though, you can find me on Twitter. I'm at Canhammer Chris. Twitter. I'm on Instagram at Canhammer Chris. And I'm on various Discords. We have a Canhammer Discord. I don't really use that too much. I'm in the WTC Discord. And so if you want to be in the WTC Discord, it's a slight fee on Patreon, whatever. And you can get in there. We do monthly scrimmages. So we take people that are just like members of the Discord, and you can sign up. We take 16, and we take 2 people from the actual WTC team. This is Max's idea, by the way. And they captain a team each, and they kind of battle it out.
No, but you're all building a community out of this team events. That's a real
competitive one, yeah.
I'll put the link to this Patreon, and I'll try to find a link to the Canhammer. I'll find my best Custodes, my favorite Custodes episode from the non-reboot, and I'll link to that one. That's gonna be my plan. Chris, thank you very much, and I'll be sure to hit you again and coerce you into filming some more content.